U-matic.
Well, now, medicine man a-pitching them herbs at the old-time medicine show. Medicine man a-pitching them herbs at the old-time medicine show. Well, a bottle for $1, $2 half, monkey on the chain just to make you laugh. Medicine man a-pitching them herbs at the old-time medicine show. But he's a long tall man with a great big grin, convincing pitch that will always win. No matter if the weather is hot or cold, he knows them herbs have gotta be sold. Medicine man a-pitching them herbs at the old-time medicine show. Medicine man a-pitching them herbs at the old-time medicine show. Well, a bottle for $1, a $2 hat, monkey on a chain just to make you laugh. Medicine man a-pitching them herbs at the old-time medicine show. How about that?
On April 1st, 1933 in Anderson, South Carolina, Tommy Scott appeared on his first radio broadcast. It was about this same time he formed the original Georgia Peanut Band. 46 years later, Tommy Scott is still one of the busiest country music entertainers around. His show has a new supporting cast, but the ingredients that have made him somewhat of a show business institution are still there. In his career, he has starred on countless radio and TV shows, including the Grand Ole Opry and the world's original Jamboree in Wheeling, West Virginia. He starred in a Western movie, Trail of the Hawk, has made records and written several songs, many of them recorded by some of today's biggest stars. His show over the years has featured many of the great names in show business, including for 15 years, Colonel Tim McCoy. In 1976, Tommy Scott was formally recognized by the Country Music Hall of Fame when his name was put in the Walkway of Stars. Where is he now, and what has 40 years on the road been like, and what about the medicine show, perhaps the last of its kind? We'll find out all of these things in the next hour as we talk with Tommy Scott, who is doing his best to keep alive an art that died years ago.
Guaranteed to make you feel fine. Now, if you got to itch so bad, takes two to help you scratch. And if you can't help thunder, cause your ears are full of wax. And if your sugar booger's dad keep calling you a dirty heel, don't let your nerves get shook up or let out with a squeal. Just take a dose or two of cure-all and your trouble gotta go. And tell them you got it at the medicine show. Shake well, ye bottle of cure-all. Mother Nature's herbs, fruits, berries, and wine. Shake well. Shake well, ye bottle of cure-all. Guaranteed to make you feel fine. Shake well. Ye bottle of cure-all. The Mother Nature's herbs, fruits, berries, and wine. Shake well. Ye bottle of cure-all. Guaranteed to make you feel fine. Shake well. Ye bottle of cure-all. The Mother Nature's herbs, roots, berries, and wine. Shake well. Ye bottle of cure-all. Guaranteed to make you feel fine. 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 Sold out, Doc.
Hello, I'm Jim Welch. Tommy Scott was born and raised at the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains near Toccoa, Georgia, where he started playing the guitar and singing before he was 10. And while he was still in his teens, his first professional job was entertaining with an old-time traveling medicine show at a salary of $6 per week. A far cry from the close to $1 million his show would gross in later years. A far cry indeed from Doc Chamberlain and where it all began.
That's exactly right, Jim. Yes, sirree, we've made a lot of miles, sold a lot of herbs, roots, barks, and berries. It's good to have you on the medicine show here.
Thank you. It's fun to be here. Let's talk about, we'll see lots of pieces of the medicine show later on, but let's talk about where it all began and what indeed is a medicine show.
Well, Jim, you see, the medicine business started way back 5,000 years ago in the Orient, in China. That's where they started picking up the different herbs, roots, barks, and berries for medicinal purposes and so on. And then, of course, this was transferred to the States and so on. And then people promoting, you know, got involved in it, and in the mountain country of North Carolina and many places in the United States where you can find the finest of herbs, roots, barks, and berries to blend together into a tonic laxative. Then the show people got involved, the showman, and then the medicine show doc was born. That's how the old medicine show doc got started. And, of course, the herbs, roots, barks, and berries, they would blend together, and then you had to put on a show, you see, to gather the people and hold them so doc could pitch the medicine and sell the herbs.
Before we talk more about some of the different medicine shows that were on the road, you mentioned about pitching. Let's talk about the jam pitch.
Oh.
Because we have in front of us here the jam pitch box.
That's the jam pitch box right here. here. Okay, now for the people that's never heard of a jam pitch box, the older people back will remember seeing the medicine men come to town, and they would set up like if there was a court trial going on or something in town, you see. Why, they had to work real fast, and a lot of them didn't have a license. The ones that did, they had what they called a reader. Now, that would be an old medicine man that was in World War I or II, and the government would give them a license to work any place. So they had no problems. They could set up the jam box and go right along and work at ease. But now then, here come along a guy that wouldn't have a license or a reader. So he had to have something to carry the stock in and to do the pitch, and something he could set up real quick and sell to the people and get it packed away before somebody might call the cop and say, you don't have a license, and he's out of business and had it in a suitcase and gone. That was
so
the
he
jam
comes
box.
up and he sets this up with the 4 legs, and he starts talking about Herbalax or whatever type
whatever the medicine
at the time.
This one here is about 60 years old. That's a real one. Old Doc Ben Thomas had this one, and he gave it to me many years ago.
The trick to it, too, as Tommy was explaining, is the reason for it all is he'll be talking and selling the medicine.
Right.
And maybe gets a little nervous, and he starts selling, but he packs up as he's finishing selling, right?
There you go.
He's ready to walk out.
He's got the store right by the handle and gone, you see. Now, Doc Chamberlain is where I really started, Jim. Doc Chamberlain came to Toccoa, Georgia, my hometown, and I'd been picking the guitar and playing here and there for old country dances and so on. And I wanted to get into show business, so I went around and told him what I could do, you see, with the guitar and so on. And he says, well, I need a guy. So he hired me up, Doc M.F. Chamberlain. He was from Valdosta, Georgia, and he had this tonic laxative that I have here, Herbalac. Now, this medicine actually was first put together. The first time that Herbalac was ever blended together was around 1890. So he'd had it many years before I got involved with him, you see, down through the years. And there was many, many other docs. Now, they were not medical doctors. You know, medical doctors is D.R., but they were D.O.C.
Right. Well, when you joined with Doc Chamberlain, what did he have you do?
Just the guitar.
Entertaining the people?
Right, and sing. I'd step up and sing. They'd get the people in. He'd ring a bell.
He would sell.
And he had a gimmick that it looked like he'd stuck a sword through his neck. And they used a little ketchup or something to make it look like blood, and everybody run down to see what Doc had. And Doc had the ventriloquial talking doll, and he taught me, we'll get old Luke Mcluke. You see, the medicine man always had to have something to attract attention. That was the gimmick to it. You had to have something to attract attention. Then they'd slip the commercial in. It's done on television right on now, you know.
Tommy, you mentioned, too, in earlier conversations that they, at that time, back in the 20s and 30s and maybe even early 40s, they would try to find a town that had a murder trial going on.
The reason for that, those murder trials would usually go on for a week or 10 days, and they'd create a lot of attention and a lot of people, crowds. The courthouse would be full and the grounds full of them trying to hear what was going on, you see. And when they'd break for dinner, lunch, or whatever, then Doc was right ready to pitch, and that's the way they done it. There's many of them. There was M.F. Chamberlain. He's the one that I started with. There was Doc Paget, and he's one that worked the South, all down in the South. Diamond Jim Spiegel had Spiegelax. Get that title for a medicine. Spiegelax. That was Diamond Jim. He wore the great big diamond pins, anything to create attention so the people would come around. And then there was Doc Bartok. And he finally wound up having one of the biggest tent shows, and they didn't charge to get in. They sold the herbs, roots,
$1 a bottle, right?
$1 a bottle.
Or was it less than that way back?
No, it was $1 a bottle. As far back as I can remember, it was $1 a bottle.
Now, this is what it looks like, and this is a real old-time bottle, too.
This one here, Jim, this bottle that you're holding, there's only 13 bottles of Herbalac, the real stuff, left on Earth.
And
this is one of them. That's the real stuff in there, you see.
I mentioned this is more than just colored water, and the medicine men were not just selling colored water.
That is right. In other words, what it was made of was senna, rhubarb, and the different herbs, roots, and barks and berries that they would gather together and blend it together, you see, and mix it into the brew. And then, of course, it had a preserver to keep it from going bad, souring, and so on. Usually a little alcohol, say, to keep it from spoiling.
Speaking of alcohol, now, for example, would anybody buy this knowing there was a bit of alcohol? If they didn't drink, but they thought, this is legit,
well,
Widow Jones might take one of these, for example. What percentage was it?
I'd rather not go into the percentage of the alcohol, Jim, okay?
It says on it, as a general laxative.
That's right. That's what it was.
That's how it worked.
That's what it was. It was a real laxative with tonic ingredients, you see. Now, the main thing to the medicine was the pitchment. You see, the herbs, roots, bark, I've had people say, would it really do you any good? And it really would. Now, here's why. The herbs, roots, barks, and berries here was a good laxative, and it was a good tonic. It would make them eat better and so on, and cleanse their system. But the mental attitude was the greatest thing. You take right now, the greatest surgeons on earth right now, they are reluctant to take somebody for a surgical operation or something if they're negative. If they say, oh, I've about had it, I don't know whether I should go be operated or not, then you better watch, because he's just about had it. But you let a guy walk in there and say, yeah, just go on, let's get this over with, go ahead. The mental attitude. Now, Doc had the power to stand up there in front of that audience and tell them, you take this home and take it according to directions and come back here Friday night and tell me how you feel. And this would actually happen that way. The mental attitude was the secret.
Doc was an old man, too. I say old, he was 76 or more. And,
76.
And he would come out in front of that tent or stage and come up, running up the little platform, and they think, wow, look what it does for him.
He'd do that every day. He'd run down to 76, he'd run back up, and he'd take the cap off the medicine and take a dose. He'd always take a swig of the herbs, roots, barks, and berries.
One other item we might mention, too, is that when you worked with him, if people bought it $1 a bottle, they might not really believe in it. They liked the entertainment. They'd throw the bottle away. You'd run out, pick it up, and resell it.
Oh,
right?
my, you told them that, didn't you? Yes, sir. I've seen it. I've had people come back and say, look, I brought my family out here every night to see the show, and it's just great. And we know the bills has got to be paid. I bought 2 or 3 bottles, don't want the medicine, I throwed it in the bushes. And we'd go out, really, after the show, pick it up, clean it up, sell it again tomorrow night.
We'll talk more about life on the road and about the medicine show, but we want to show you some of the acts that go into Tommy Scott's medicine show today, and a number of the different styles and types of music that you take on the road with you.
That is correct. It is according to the old-time medicine shows. Now, they traveled in the South, not only in the South, but in the northern states and into Canada and the western states. Now, wherever they was the type musical entertainment that they gave. In other words, if it was down in the mountains of Tennessee or North Carolina, cornstalk fiddle was good, you know. Now, out west, it would be a western singer would go good. The polkas up in the Dakotas was good for that section of the country.
Along with popular songs of the day.
That's exactly right, the popular songs of the day.
Let's take a look at B.C. Bruce and Texas Jim and Scotty Lee on the banjo.
That'll give you an idea how the musical part of it was, okay?
Walking the streets alone, singing the same old song. And though we be cracking these dirty sidewalks of Broadway, hustle is the name of the game. Mascot get washed away like the snow in the rain. There's been a load of compromising on the road to my horizon, but I ain't gonna be where the lights are shining on me like the rhinestone cowboy riding out on a horse in a stone-spinning rodeo. Rhinestone cowboy getting cards and letters from people I don't even know, and offers coming over the phone.
In my song, there's a rising song, and it's a happy rolling cowboy. Turn the dark clouds out of the skies, and keeping the heavens blue. Now I ain't got a wife to follow my life. I'm a happy rolling cowboy. Let me make my bed with the farmer's proud beneath the skies of blue. In my song, there's a rising song, and it's a happy rolling cowboy. Turn the dark clouds out of the skies, and keeping the heavens blue. Good night, Banjo.
Couple good numbers familiar to most people. By the way, Texas Jim and B.C. Bruce and Scotty Lee, they're not the big-name stars you see today or hear of today, but they have entertained literally millions of people throughout every country or city and state in the whole country.
We've played every place more than once.
Where did you find, for example, B.C. Bruce? Sometimes the people come up from the audience and say, I want to, you were discovered on the road, for example.
That's true, yeah. Well, we have at the end of each performance, to live with the traditions of the medicine show, the old-time medicine shows, and we still do, we have an amateur contest, or a search for talent, we like to call it. And that's at the end of the show, and that gives the people in the towns that we're playing in a chance to have their little boys and girls and the old people and tap dancers and harmonica players and so on come up and do a little bit on the stage. So B.C. Bruce, we were in North Carolina someplace, and he came up, and I liked him very much, and we put him on. We hired him.
Up on the show.
And, of course, he takes care of the music for that area of the country. And then, like Texas Jim, as they just seen there, was doing the cowboy things, the Western, like the real cowboys like in Texas.
One thing has not changed, well, one thing has changed, I should say, and that is today you don't sell Herbalac anymore. You very few medicine, well, you're the last medicine show, but it's not the same as it used to be.
That is correct. We don't sell the herbs, roots, barks,
by
and
law
berries.
you're prohibited, Tommy?
Well, no, it can be done, but it's not feasible to sell it on the road, and it would not pay the bills because the expenses is much higher. The way we do that, you got to get some money from somewhere to pay all these hillbillies, you know what I mean? So the way we do it now is with a coupon. It's like a trading stamp or a coupon, and our advanced people go into town, and they sell the supermarkets and so on the coupon, and when they buy their groceries on Saturday, they put in the coupons, and then they bring that down to come in to see Tommy Scott's old-time medicine show.
With a number of big stars, we'll talk about those later on, those you've worked with, but it seems like it would have been more fun to buy snake oil or Herbalac or whatever. Is it all one and the same?
No. Now, snake oil is a liniment, you see, but the main thing was the tonic laxative. That's the dollar seller. Then you drop down to a 50-cent seller, and that was the liniment, you see. And the liniment, they would get, now I never did sell the snake oil, but Doc Chamberlain did, and most of the others that I've mentioned did. And the gimmick was, and it really wasn't a gimmick, what they would do if a guy was there, had a bad corn on his foot, you see. Well, what they would do is mix up the compound that they had there had gasoline, white gas in it, and it was ether. That's when ether first came through. So they put a little ether in there and a little oil of wintergreen for the color and plain gasoline. Now, the reason for the gasoline, here's a guy with a corn, a bunion that's hurting him standing there, you see. So Doc would get him on the platform, and he'd say, okay, now where's it hurt? Well, you could touch any place around. He'd say, oh, don't do that. That hurts. So he'd just pour a little of that on. Now then, the leather shoe is porous. The gasoline would penetrate and go right through it. You can actually pour gasoline on the pan of your hand, and it'll come through here in a short time. Did you know that? It'll penetrate. It'll go right through the shoe. So he'd pour it. It's very effective to pour that on the outside of the shoe, and it'd go through. 1 minute later, the ether done put the corn to sleep, and Doc would slam his foot down and said, does that hurt? No. Gosh, you should see those bottles of liniment going out, you see? So that was the gimmick to that. Really wasn't a gimmick. Now, he had to take the pain out until the ether died, and then, of course, it's back again.
Hadacol was another type.
Oh, yes. Now, Hadacol was the biggest medicine. Let me back up just a little. There was a lady pitchman up in New York, Madeline Reagan, and she's the only lady pitchman that I knew of, and she was in the New York area. And then there was Hamlin's Wizardall, was one of the first on the radio. A guy named Bluegrass Roy sung and pitched and sold Hamlin's Wizardall. But then Hadacol, you hit it, Piruna was one, Indian River Herbs was another, but the Hadacol was the biggest one. But I never did class that as a real medicine show, and I'll tell you why. Senator LeBlanc owned the company, and he never was out on the courthouse squares and the lots, the empty lots in town pitching. They done it high class. They had Hank Williams and big movie stars, and what they would do, they'd come into town with 4 or 5 big truckloads of Hadacol, and they'd put it on consignment in all the drugstores, just truckloads of it. And then the only way you could get in to see the Hadacol show was with a carton flap. So they would buy it to get the carton flap, and then he'd have Mickey Rooney and the big stars there. And I never did class him, though, as a real, what you might call a platform medicine man, but he sold more medicine than anybody else.
Back in the old days, that was the gimmick. The entertainment would get them there, and they'd make their money by selling that. Let's talk about your moving on to greater fields. Well, I say different fields, let's put it that way. Movies, radio shows, television shows, and records.
Right.
And here are a few of the records which which would give you an idea of the numbers and the work that you do. You've written several songs.
Yes, about 200, Jim. About 200 songs. And, oh, you got the album here. Well, this is old Bleb. He was a little younger here, you see. And, of course, this is Scotty Lee down here when he was a little younger. And Texas Jim and B.C. Bruce had just got through saying, of course, me down here without the pitch hat on. You see, this was back a few years ago when I did some performances, like the movie thing and so on, that I didn't wear the medicine outfit. And this is my granddaughter, Pam, and my grandson, Jeff, over here. He's a drummer, and she's a singer and works in the Magic Act.
It's a family affair, and you played every place more than once.
Every place more than once. This is an album of Clyde Moody, who wrote Shenandoah Waltz that we'll talk about later, and all the different towns. You can see we got them on there, Canada, Mexico, name it, and they're on the front of that one, you see.
Are you still on the road, Tommy?
Yes, we're on the road 350 different towns a year, 350 different ones. And these albums, incidentally, were the backliner was signed by Roy Acuff and Ernest Tubb. Did one
In fact,
of them.
is this particular album right here, Ernest Tubb did the backliner.
Right.
Roy Acuff and Lester Flatt.
That is correct. And these are old-time songs. This album here now is the old-time. There's a great market now for the songs of the 30s and 40s are coming back, and that's the type. They're not the smash hits that you hear, you know, the modern things that play on the stereo stations and so on.
What about your radio shows and television shows? Grand Ole Opry had to be a highlight in the early, well, by 1940.
That is correct. But I started on WAIM in Anderson, South Carolina. It was for Vimmerb. That was another medicine there. That was my first radio. Then I went to the Jamboree, WWVA Jamboree, and that's where I joined Charlie Monroe. That's Bill Monroe is very popular in the bluegrass, and his brother Charlie, they were a team together, Charlie and Bill Monroe and the old hired hand. And they split up. And I was one of Charlie Monroe's original Kentucky partners, along with String Bean, who later was on Hee Haw, and Lester Flatt, who passed away recently. And Lester took my place on Charlie Monroe's original Kentucky Partners band. And then I wandered around and finally wound up, I was at the Grand Ole Opry for about a year.
And a few years later, Hollywood beckoned, you did Trail of the Hawk.
That is true. I went to Hollywood, I did Trail of the Hawk, and about 16 musical shorts. Back in those days, it was the thing to run a Western movie and then a musical short, they call them. Some of them were 10 minutes, some 15, 20, and they'd have a cartoon and a little musical thing that we'd do with a comedy bit or something in it. But Trail of the Hawk was a James Oliver Curwood story. It was a book, James Oliver Curwood book. And I star in the picture, and we don't let an outlaw get away in that thing.
Let's get back to the medicine show and the fact that more than music, you had the novelty acts, and you had whip acts and rifle acts.
Again, you had to attract the attention of the people. So then the old-time medicine shows and the Tommy Scott medicine show right now, we still try to have something different. Not superstars or super names anymore, but just something different. They see everything on TV and they want something different. So we do use the whip acts and Annie Oakley shooting and so on.
Let's take a look
I believe it's starting
what it's all
again.
about. Now, in the whip act, you've used various whip artists over the years. But this fellow here has been with you the longest, and he plays, of course, the masked
rider
cowboy.
Yeah, the masked rider, and he has done this for about 28 to 30 years. I tell you, we find that the people everywhere like anything to do with westerns. The old western movies, of course, proved that many years ago. And we have the masked rider, and he's the only one that has done this, and he's done this on the Tommy Scott Medicine Show for all these years. And he is old Bleb that did the laugh up there when he drank the medicine. That's another trick to the medicine show. They had to double. You had to double and do many different things.
In this case, you're bringing the audience into the show, and of course the family of these two boys are enthused about the idea of them being on stage.
That is correct. It's always good to get the audience participation, so we always have 2 or 3 kids from the audience come up and be a part of the act, you see. Then old Bleb will go back and redress for another act now, you see.
And you have the Annie Oakley.
Now here's Annie Oakley.
She's using a lever-action .22 rifle now, and she'll start out by breaking up some candy wafers about the size of a nickel. You know, a lot of times you can't always grab it with one hand, so you have to shoot it left-handed too. So here's the left-handed shot. A lot of times if you get busy on the range with your horse, you can't grab it with either hand, so you got to do it this way, one-handed. Now this time Jim's going to put up a plain old piece of marking chalk. She'll shoot it and fix it to where it don't mark so good anymore. Now Jim has a small birthday candle. He'll light this, place it in the box, and what she plans to do is to shoot the candle and put out the fire. In other words, folks, she plans to shoot the blazes out of it. Now this time, Jim will place another candle in the box. This one will be on a swing. He'll swing it back and forth, and what she plans to do is to shoot it on the move. Kind of like shooting at rabbits on the run. Gonna have to light that again, Texas Jim. The swing blew it out. Now you ain't seen nothing yet, because this time Jim's gonna place 2 candles in the box. He'll put a knife in between the 2 candles. What she plans to do is to shoot the knife, hopefully split a bullet. One part of the bullet to put out 1 candle, and the other part of the bullet will put out the other candle. So you watch closely to see as the bullet hits the knife, splits, and puts out the 2 candles, all at the same once. A good one, if she can do it. She did it! Miss Modern Day Annie Oakley, assisted by Texas Jim. All right, what I want to do right now is I want to see if I can get... What in the world? What are you doing?
I'm killing time.
I don't know, folks. I guess he must have been into medicine again. I don't know what's the matter with him today, but what I was going to... Hey, come here. What you got in the bag?
Milk.
You can't carry milk in a bag.
A cow does.
If he gets a car out of that, it's going to have to be a shiny new sports car, because that show is a small box for a car. Round and round and round we go. And where we stop, everybody don't know. Empty boxes always amaze me, especially with a magician. Hey, great, who did it? Hey, great, who did it? Great, Honduny!
What now?
Let's go back to that 4-legged table thingamajig there. See, you've been taking the box off and the cylinder off and the box off and the cylinder off. And what I think you need to do here is just to go ahead and take both of them off at the same time.
They don't want me to do that.
How about it, folks? Y'all want to take them off? Yeah! I guess you heard that. Now just go right ahead, take it off. Come on, take it off. Hey, what are you doing?
You said take it off.
No. This is a family show, not a burlesque show. Go back over there to the 4-legged box and just do the magic. You take your clothes off, you make the audience disappear.
That's one.
Well, it didn't take Columbo to figure that out. Now go ahead and take off the other one. Ah, looky there. What in the world? What are you going to do with that little dog? You certainly can't change that dog into a shiny new sports car. Oh, well. Let's everybody wave bye-bye to the doggy. Bye, dog. Get your feet down in the box. Aw, doggone. Now, here we go, folks. We're going to turn that poor little dog into a shiny new sports car. Hey, what are they doing?
They going round and round with the dog.
Well, I can see that, but they're going to have that dog so mixed up it ain't going to know where it's at and get lost from the medicine show. Now, what are you doing?
I'm sprinkling waffle dust.
Waffle dust? Well, I'm going to tell you one thing for certain. If those 2 good-looking young ladies don't quit going round and around with that poor little dog, they're going to turn it into a new drunk. That's what they're going to turn it into. Now, here we go, folks. We're going to get us out a shiny new sports car.
1, 2, 3.
Well, it isn't the most sophisticated entertainment in the world, and it's not exactly classical opera, but people enjoy it. The kids enjoy it. It's good, clean fun.
You've got to attract attention with a medicine show.
Yeah.
And this will do it. And it is clean fun, right?
Played it all over the country. Right. And you do appeal, it used to be called Family Fun Time.
That's true. Yeah. And we are in 350 different towns a year. throughout the entire North American continent, let's put it that way.
Earlier in that segment, we saw the sharpshooting of the woman who plays Annie Oakley. Now, that is the wife of a very famous old-time star.
Yes, that's true. That's Clyde Moody's wife. And as I said in the beginning, everybody doubles, you see. Through the entire show, they'll do 2, 3 to 4 different turns, everybody doubles. And then the old medicine shows years ago, then they doubled that way. And also, they mixed the medicine after the show for tomorrow night's performance, you see. And greased the wagon, fixed flat tires, anything that had to be done. That's the medicine show.
We've talked about a few of the good friends of yours along the way, String Bean, who went on to fame in Hee Haw and the Grand Ole Opry, and Grandpa Jones, you knew, and you had many of the Western stars who became a big part of your act. Colonel Tim Mccoy, of course, was the best.
Tim McCoy was one of the greatest. Back in the early 30s, 40s, and 50s, Tim, Buck Jones, Hoot Gibson, Tim McCoy, Sunset Carson, they ruled the roost during those days, you know. And Tim came over to work with me 13 weeks. You see, the movie business kind of faded, you know, in the later years. And so Tim played some fairs and so on, and he came over to do 13 weeks with me, and some agent in Hollywood booked him on. And at the end of 13 weeks, I said, well, come over and try it for that long. And if I like you, and you like me, and you like the Tommy Scott Medicine Show, then let's get together and see what we can do further. So at the end of the first 13 weeks, Tim McCoy and I shook hands, and he stayed 15 years with me until he passed away earlier this year.
That was I thought somebody was bringing the shooting act into the studio. Tim McCoy was famous, of course, for the very early Westerns, but I wonder how many knew that the Colonel was a real rank.
He was really a real colonel. He was the colonel in World War I, retired colonel in World War I and World War II.
What about other big stars such as Fuzzy St. John? How did you get to know and meet and make them part of your show?
Well, when I was in Hollywood doing my movie Trail of the Hawk, I met quite a few of the Western stars. They visit from different studio and sets to others, and I met quite a few. And like I say, in the later years, while they would contact me, a Christmas card or something, and say, if you need another act on the show, let me know, you see.
Fuzzy St. John, for those that don't remember, made many, many Westerns as the sidekick, the Gabby Hayes or the Smiley Burnett type.
That's correct.
He was with Lash LaRue and with
I
Sunset
believe in
Carson
every one of Lash LaRue's. Yeah. I think he was the sidekick in every one of them.
And Fuzzy was with Tommy Scott, was still entertaining to the day he died.
That is correct. He was with me the last 7 years of his life, and he did a show down in Florida someplace, and we packed up the show and moved to the next town, and he checked into the motel there. He was feeling bad, and he passed away. And that's the way Fuzzy would have liked it, almost on stage.
Of course, Sunset Carson, who in 1945 was the number 5 box office attraction. He made 40 big pictures for Republic Pictures, and was ranked one of the leading box office attractions. He was with your show for
That
quite
is
a
very
while.
true, and he is quite often with the show now. He was with me a year and a half at one stretch, and all across Canada. And they loved him up there too, way back in the sticks in Canada too.
And currently his show features another big star of the early, perhaps in the 50s, and that's Clyde Moody, who with Shenandoah Waltz, Shenandoah sold 3 million. The song sold even more.
That is correct. Now, you see, Clyde Moody was the lead singer with Bill Monroe on all of Bill Monroe's big hits back in the early days. Then Clyde went on his own, and his recording of Shenandoah Waltz sold 3 million. Lawrence Welk and about 30 other big stars recorded, and it sold over 30 million. And it's actually the actual record, the actual master is in the Country Music Hall of Fame of Shenandoah Waltz for the 3 million that sold for Clyde.
How long has Clyde been with you, and is he doing well? I mean, he's not a young man anymore.
That is correct, and Clyde's been with me 4 years, and we're still going for 100.
Does he ever tell exactly what age he is?
Well, he's getting on up there.
He sure is. He had a big hit with.
That is true. With Shannon, I believe he's just about ready to sing it for us right now.
Let's listen to Shenandoah Waltz. These were taped earlier in Asheville, North Carolina.
Shenandoah Valley of Virginia lives a girl who's waiting just for me. Oh, how many times we've waltzed in the moonlight. In her loving arms I long to be. I miss her smiles in the moonlight. I know she misses Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. I know that her love for me is true. And I thank you so much. Thank you.
Clyde Moody with Shenandoah Waltz.
And you worked with a few other big names. We mentioned String Bean was the star of Hee Haw, was a good friend.
That he was one of my very closest friends. Of course, you know, he was murdered a few years ago. It was a great waste of humanity there. And he was a great performer. And there's nobody performed like String Bean. And he was my friend for over 40 years and toured right here on the Tommy Scott Medicine Show.
And Johnny Mac Brown, another famous Southern Cowboys football star, then a Cowboy star.
That is right. He kicked the football around, and that's really what got him into movies. He made a lot of pretty darn good B movies there, too, you know. And he toured with me quite a while.
When a star such as Johnny Mac Brown would tour with your show, he didn't play guitar, he didn't sing. What was the attraction? What did the people want to come to see Johnny Mac other than he's a big star?
Well, Johnny Mac would go out and talk about the movies. We have a little question and answer thing with the audience. He'd say, well, is there any picture that I did that fascinated you from some angle or so on? And Mrs. Jones would say, oh, what did you do and how did you do this or something, you know? And that's the height of his act. He could not do any kind of a singing or guitar picking or talking doll act or anything of the kind. So mostly all he could do, he did about 12, 15 minutes just talking about Western, and the people liked it.
They'd come to see it.
Yeah. I prefer an entertainer, though, that can really get out and do several different things, you know.
Tommy, let's talk about life on the road, because you mentioned you're traveling and entertaining somewhere different almost every day. How do you move around from city to city, and doesn't it get to be difficult at times?
Maybe we don't know any different. Yeah. I'll put it this way. We start the first day of January. We're in a different town each day up until the week after Thanksgiving. We're usually home we're home maybe 5 weeks or something in there. It's according to how the bookings come in. And we travel about 50 to 75 miles a day, like the old-time medicine shows used to travel. And we're usually booked, most of our route is booked as we go along. Some of them have us up 8, 10, 12 times back, the same sponsors year after year, you see. And when the show's over at the end of a given day there, they just sign up for next year. And then we have 3 agents. They're the people that go in and set the exact date and get the auditorium set up for the performance and get it on the contract for the advertising. And then we have about 25 crews that go in to sell the coupons that we mentioned earlier. So in the entire Tommy Scott Medicine Show operation, there's about 100 to 125 eating out of it.
What is life on the road like? You're not eating good home cooking.
Well, now, wait a minute. Now, the home cooking, now, I'll have to differ with you there. You see, the old medicine shows toured in the wagons, and they had what they call a cookhouse. There'd be one lady in the group usually that couldn't do anything on the show hardly, but cook, so that she would cook for everybody. And we sort of followed through on that. Now, we don't have the cookhouse, but we travel in modern motorhomes and trailers. And in the motorhomes, they have modern air conditioning and toilet facilities and a place to cook and good beds and so on. So we move into the National Guard Armory or the arena or whatnot, and we've got home on wheels right there. And incidentally, Jim, we get back into the sticks in Canada to where you might have to drive 30 or 40 miles to find a motel or something. And some of the towns that we play are 1,000, 1,500 population. We have 4,000 or 5,000 people out to see the show. They come in by dog sled and otherwise.
So you're in good shape with your motor caravan.
So we have our homes right with us, and that makes traveling a lot more happy.
And you've got your family with you too. Let's talk, if we can, a bit, if we can get a shot of this, of Miss Frankie.
Miss Frankie, okay. There's Miss Frankie. Now then, I might say that Miss Frankie is Mrs. Tommy Scott here. And years ago, she did the magic on the show. And she also, 15 minutes later, after she looked like this and did this act, this is her again in the character of Clarabelle, the gal from the mountains. And the people watching this, many of them will remember back 20, 30 years ago seeing Clarabelle, the gal from the mountains. And
she's still with you today?
She's, well, I put it this way. After 40-something years, we're still sweethearts. And she's a partner in the Tommy Scott Medicine Show now. She doesn't perform, but she's one of my partners.
And your children, your daughter Sandra has been involved?
My daughter Sandra used to play the bass, and she was my girl singer until she was about 18. And she did a high act. She worked up as high as 70, 80 feet without a net back in those days. And then she got married. She married Charles Whitworth, and he works for the state of Georgia in the highway department. He's quite high up the hog. And it's always good to have, you know, show business is a little tricky sometimes. It's always good to have one in the family that's got a real good, substantial job, you know.
Like, let's talk about, it's not a member of the family, but it's someone who's been with you a long time, made out of wood.
Oh, Luke Mcluke. Yeah.
Luke's been with you since...
Every medicine show throughout the ages, always, again, to attract attention. They always carried a talking doll. Just about everyone would carry a talking doll. And, of course, Luke Mcluke has been with me all through the years. And he is the nicest employee I've ever had. He never fusses or asks for a raise.
Doesn't eat much either.
That's correct. Say hello to Jim. Hi, Jim! All right. Now, that's enough out of you. Don't let him get started,
well,
okay?
That's an interesting piece of craftsmanship, though, and that's art in itself, isn't it? Luke Mcluke was made out of cypress.
That is correct. Now, Luke Mcluke was made out of cypress, and at the time, I don't think there would have been over a half a dozen ventriloquists in the United States at the time. And Doc Chamberlain had 2 dolls, and we got into Elberton, Georgia, where they carved the monuments and the angels and so on out of granite. So we got a piece of cypress and talked to one of the carving guys after the show one night to carve the head of Luke Mcluke, the talking doll, and we put him together. Now, his body is an oil can. And he's been going. Of course, now you can buy talking dolls after Charlie McCarthy and all the rest, you know.
But he does. They don't have the personality of Luke.
Well, there you go. And he's a very good employee.
There's one other segment of the Tommy Scott Medicine Show that is quite interesting to watch, and there's always novelty acts. But this is called a Banjo Turnaround.
Right. The Banjo Turnaround. Now, I might say that's done by Scotty Lee. And now, old Bleb has been with me 32 years, and Scotty Lee was born and raised on the show, and we was talking about traveling. He got his schooling by a correspondence course that was sent out to us, and he got his education that way. Now, you'll notice the playing drums on the show here is my grandson, and then the little girl in the red outfit in the magic act there, doing the off-bearing of the magic there, that's my granddaughter. So, again, it's more or less a
family affair.
Right.
Let's take a look at the Banjo Turnaround.
All right, another novelty act.
You ready? Ready. 1, 2, 3. Barging out here hollering, hold it. What do you want?
I've played that grandfather's clock song before, and that's not the way it goes.
What? Ain't nothing wrong with that song. What's the matter with it?
You're playing the song all backwards.
Oh, no, we're not.
Oh, yes, you are.
No, we ain't.
I want you to turn the song around and play it right. Just turn it around. Turn the song around. Just turn it around.
He'd probably hear it backwards anyways, folks, so if that's what he wants us to do, we'll play it for him that way.
Are you ready?
Ready.
1, 2, 3.
Why?
I guess you heard them folks applauding out there, now didn't you?
I certainly did. I ain't deaf. I heard the people applauding, and the reason that them folks was applauding out there is 'cause they liked it.
That's not why they're...
Yes, it is.
Oh,
that's it.
You're wrong. That's not why they're applauding.
All right, smart Alec. Why are they applauding?
They're applauding because you look better when they're looking at your back than when they're looking at your face.
No, that ain't it. No, that ain't it.
Yes. Now, you still ain't together on it. I want you to get together on it. Just get together on it. Get together on it. Get together on it.
You sound like a broke record. Get together, get together, get together, get together.
Come on, let's do it this way so he'll leave us alone.
Work us back.
You ready? Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Yes, sir. Step right up and get yourself a bottle of herbs, roots, barks, and berries gathered from many parts of the globe and blended into one mild yet effective tonic laxative, and the old doc's done sold out. That's the way they used to do it, Jim.
Let her go, boys. Remember how the Grand Ole Opry used to start? You met the man who started it.
The solemn old judge, yes. And I have an
Judge
album
Hay.
coming out, and Judge Hay is on the album. Me and the doll, Luke Mcluke here, was on the Grand Ole Opry on this given night. And there's not many voice tracks left of Judge Hay. And he's the founder of the Grand Ole Opry, and I'm awful happy to have this album with Judge Hay taking me off the air on the Grand Ole Opry with the doll.
Have you ever thought about making a documentary of On the Road of your life, or putting it down at least in a book, as Colonel McCoy's, or Tim McCoy's son has written a book about him? Is there any chance that the same thing might be done of your life?
Yes, the way they did this, Ronnie McCoy went on the road with Tim, and his lifespan is so great with the Indian folklore and everything that he was involved in, and he was the adjutant general of Wyoming one time and had a 5,000-acre ranch out there, and oh, his life is fabulous to dig into the Indian thing all the way through. So Ronnie did it with tape. He took about 25 hours of tape just on the road for about a year. And so after his father died, of course, that book was published, and we have quite a bit of well, not footage, but pages in the Tim McCoy life story book. So he wanted to do a book with me, and we're working on it now. I'm going to record about 30 hours, starting back where I started on the farm in North Georgia, right on through up to modern day, the way that the Tommy Scott Medicine Show is right now. And I'm going to do this on tape because I'm not a writer. He knows how to put this into the proper words. And Ronnie McCoy is going to do this book.
Have you had any extremely hard times, Tommy, over the years? 46 years on the road is a long time, but any really hard times that came around?
We have never been completely broke. We've been down to pork and beans, and just name one show that hasn't any place. We have been, but this show has never closed. Many circuses, I can name you a dozen of the big ones that have been broke maybe a dozen or 2 dozen times, you know, during their lifespan, which most of the circuses 50 to 75, Ringling Brothers up to 100 and something now. But our show, during the 60-something years that we have been operating, we have never closed and gone out of business from being broke. Now, we have had some pretty thin meals back during the time, but most of my people, like I say, we're a family-type organization, and we just buckle down and say we got to do this and do that and change the acts and so on. And we did, one thing that we did back during the years was change the type of music that we was doing and so on. We got a little into the rock thing one time, and then people would come to me and say, that's not a medicine show, get back to it. And some TV announcer with a newscast came out and shot a little of the show about 6 or 8 years ago. And he says, look, why don't you go back to the real medicine show? So now when they see us on the stage, we even got the lanterns burning and everything. The set's exactly as near as we could make it like the old-time medicine show. And it's working. We're back to having terrific crowds again.
Of course, you've worked with thousands of entertainers, it seems, over the years, many of them coming through your show, even though some of them have been with you since almost the beginning. But you've worked with thousands. We're going to see the entire cast of your present-day show come up together in just a few minutes to do a grand finale of one of the numbers, which is Have a Good Day, which is a song that you wrote.
Right.
But we've mentioned these names before, and our audience, as our viewers, have heard those names, but who makes up the present-day Tommy Scott show? It's Clyde Moody, for one.
Clyde Moody,
you, of course.
Right, and me. We do the opening, of course, as we're doing here on the broadcast today. But then it's B.C. Bruce has been with me many years, and then Scotty Lee and Old Bleb. And Mrs. Blevins, Scotty Lee's mother, is my secretary on the road. And, of course, my daughter handles, as we said earlier, the office back at home base. And then basically the same people have been with me year after year throughout the years.
Before we roll Have a Good Day, before we take a look at that number and talk about how you wrote it or why you wrote it, but one thing we haven't talked about in this entire hour, and that is the life on the road, difficult, for one. But no booze problems, and I say that because you hear about drug problems and alcohol problems with entertainers, especially those who are the pressures of entertaining night after night. Has that ever been a problem?
That has never been a problem. If it ever
Well, that's
started,
because you had Herbalites.
well, that is correct. We had the herbs, roots, barks, and berries. But I'll tell you the secret to it. If it ever started to be a problem, we stopped it. Now then, the reason for this is that we have families. It'll be Mrs. Jones and her 2 little girls and a little boy and a family type thing. And we're sponsored by police departments and Lions Club. And the people that we work with is a different type of people. They're a high-class type audience that we have, and you just can't have drinking on the show. That's all. Now, we do allow them after the show. If one of the boys wants to have a beer or go down to the club or something, okay, so long as he's ready to go the following morning with no after effects.
What about the song Have a Good Day? When did you write it, and what's the story it tells? I guess in a line, have a good day.
Yeah, the idea, you'll notice about 65 names in the thing, and the reason for that, the names that you'll hear in Have a Good Day are the ordinary names that you hear, and everybody likes to hear their own name. Like I love to hear Tommy Scott's Old Time Medicine Show, and you like to hear Jim, you know, and everybody likes to hear the name. So one day I was sitting around and I said, well, maybe I should write a song with everybody's name in it. So we got about 65. It's just a lot of names and Have a Good Day. And of course, how many times have you gone up to pay your bill at the restaurant, and the little lady not even knowing what she'd say, well, your bill is X amount, and you pay her, and she'd say, well, thank you for coming and eating with us, and have a good day. Again, that has been used many, many times.
Let's listen to,
All right.
Again, it's a grand finale. You have many of the entertainers in this particular song. Have a good day.
1, 2, 3, do it! Have a good day, Irene and Matt, Nancy, Ted, Katie, Jack, Timmy, Jane, Tom and Sue, Hank and May. Well, have a good day, Charles and Pat, Dolly, Ray, and Dick and Matt, Frank and Robin, Lee and Jay. Have a good day. Have a good day, hey, hey, have a good day. Have a good day. Meet a friend along the way, say have a good day. Have a good day, hey, hey, have a good day. Whoever you are, smile and say have a good day. We're gonna do it now. Get down, go, go. Oh yeah. All right. Get it, get it, get it, get it, get it. Teresa, Scotty, Ruth, and Bill and Lisa, Clyde and Rose, Mike and Mary, Joe and Faye. Well, have a good day, Nell and Ben, Pam and Jeff and Jane and Lynn, Smith and Jones, Brown and Gray. Have a good day. Have a good day, hey, hey, have a good day. Be your friend along the way, say have a good day. Have a good day, hey, hey, have a good day. Whoever you are, smile and say have a good day. Whoever you are, smile and say have a good day. Yeah.
Well, we're getting close to time, Tommy, close to the hour. We want to thank the folks at WLOS-TV in Asheville, North Carolina for doing many of the entertainment portions of the show, and we're glad you came down to the South Carolina ETV network to talk with us. I hadn't mentioned earlier, especially during the Whip Act on stage, that about 1948 or 49, when I was growing up in a small town in Vermont, this traveling medicine show came to town, and they came up on the farm, or one of the advance people came up on the farm and asked me if I was coming to the show, which my family was going, and would I like to take part in the Whip Act. Well, that was a big deal for anybody to take part in a big country show, in a big traveling show, and I was on stage that night, and they took that whip and they took the paper out of my mouth. But there's one thing the audience didn't know, and my friends in school never let me forget it. I was in the 3rd or 4th grade. When the whip artist came up to me, he said, okay, now I'm going to come close to you. Pretend you're real scared, jump off the stage and run out the door. So I did that. He came close. He didn't hurt me, but I jumped off stage, and the kids in school thought I was a chicken for several years afterward for doing that.
And you see, this was not staged. You know, we didn't know this when I came to the station, and you asked me.
Straight coincidence.
Did you play? And I did. Yeah. So you was there. Yeah, little did you know then that we'd
30
be
years
here.
later.
But that's something. That's really something.
What do you plan? 46 years you've been on the road. When will retirement come? Are you retiring soon?
Oh, my goodness, Jim. No way. Why should I retire? As long as there's a bottle of hokum to carry out on the road and tell the folks about, why should I retire? I'd be the most unhappy person in the world if I had to sit someplace on the in a rocking chair on the porch and rock and let everybody else go by. I want to be one of them that's going by.
What about traveling outside the U.S. and Canada? You've maintained your shows throughout this side of the continent. What about going abroad?
We may go to Australia. There's been some stories, some news releases on us and some newspaper stories and so on. And especially when I get the book out, maybe in a year or so, we may go. The only problem is to transport all the paraphernalia we have to carry with us to make it a medicine show. All the bottles of hokum and everything that it takes to make a medicine show, and go halfway around the world to do it, you know. But we've got a lot of followers down there. In fact, my records are, I've never had hit records, really. The trick to our show business is we try to put on a good enough show, Jim, when we're in a town that the people will remember us next year, and maybe they're sitting in the barber shop or something, and they'll say, well, they'll see one of our posters, you know, and they'll say, well, that medicine show, you going to go see it? And another brother will say, oh, yeah, they were here last year, and well, Tommy Scott was with this thing, and I'm going back. It's always something different.
Tommy, when you fold up the tent and pass into the great beyond, what do you want to be remembered most by?
Well, that is quite a question there, and I'll tell you, Jim, maybe I could place it this way. The greatest pleasure that I have got and would like to think that I would leave after I have passed on to the great medicine show in the sky would be the happiness that I have brought to the many millions of people and the many families that have come out to see my show year after year after year. That I just like to pass on into the great beyond by thinking, and maybe could look back and have people talk about when Tommy Scott's old-time medicine show came to town. Leave them happy. That's the greatest thing I could leave.
Thank you, Tommy Scott. Thank you for being with us. We hope you've enjoyed the last medicine show. Good night.
Oh, yeah. I grew up learning all I know, taking hard knocks on a medicine show. We never had much money, but things got bad. Even when we did, we gave it all we had. We had our own little medicine show, helping people everywhere we go. Well, we traveled all night and we did all right on the Tommy Scott Medicine Show. The old-time medicine show. It's hard. Sister played the tambourine, and I would strum the banjo strings. Oh, the times weren't easy, and when things got tough, well, we could always count on each other's love. Yeah. We had our own little medicine show, helping people everywhere we go. Well, we traveled all night and we did all right on the old-time medicine show. The Tommy Scott Medicine Show. Oh, yeah. Folks would come from miles around, hey, just to see our show. Oh, when the sun went down, and they'd buy our herbs when the sun was through, 'cause they knew what the doc had said was true. Every word. We had our own little medicine show, helping people everywhere we go. Well, we traveled all night and we did all right on the old-time medicine show.
U-matic.